My parents' house in Brookline, expecting balloons, maybe a cake, maybe, just once, a celebration meant for me. Instead, I walked into a room arranged like a courtroom. 200 relatives sat in tight rows of folding chairs, all facing a long table at the front. Every seat was filled. Every pair of eyes turned toward me at the same time. There were no decorations, no music, no cake, just judgment. My mother, Victoria Kensington, began pulling my childhood photos off the wall one by one, ripping them straight down the middle. My father stood, cleared his throat, and unfolded a stack of papers. He read aloud a parental expense ledger, totaling $412,750. Every dollar, he claimed, they had invested in raising me. My younger sister, Avery, stepped forward with a smile and slipped my car keys out of my hand. "Dad already transferred the title," she said lightly. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked out the front door without saying a single word. 4 days later, they were calling me nearly 80 times a day. I didn't answer. And I'll tell you why. Before I read every single one, and it truly means more to me than you know. Now let me take you back to where this story began. Growing up in the Kensington family, I learned early that there were two kinds of children in our house: Avery and everyone else. My father, Charles Kensington, built Kensington Realty Group from nothing. He measured success in square footage, closed deals, and quarterly returns. My mother had once been a teacher, but after marrying him, she traded classrooms for charity galas and private dinner parties. And then there was Avery, 4 years younger, effortlessly beautiful, and undeniably the center of everything. When I earned a full academic scholarship at 16, I stood on that stage scanning the auditorium for my parents. They weren't there. Avery had a ballet recital that afternoon. More important, my mother later explained, barely glancing up from her phone. When I graduated from nursing school at 22, top of my class, my mother sighed. "If only you'd studied business like Avery," she said. "Your father would finally have someone to take over the company." It didn't matter that Avery dropped out of that program 2 years later. It didn't matter that I was working overnight shifts in the ICU at Massachusetts General Hospital while she was running up credit cards and chasing investment schemes. In my parents' eyes, Avery could do no wrong, and I could never quite do enough. My beautiful youngest daughter, my mother would coo at family dinners, smoothing Avery's hair. Then she'd turn to me. "Blair, can't you learn something from your sister?" Oh, I learned that love in our house came with conditions I could never seem to meet. I learned to stay quiet, to shrink myself, to smooth things over. But there was one person who saw me differently, one person who loved me without measuring my worth. My grandmother, Eleanor Sinclair. When I told her I wanted to be a nurse instead of joining my father's company, she took my hands in hers, steady, warm, unwavering. "Taking care of people is noble work, sweetheart," she told me. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The doctors gave her 18 months, maybe 2 years if she was lucky. My parents discussed hiring a live-in caregiver. Avery suggested a nursing home. "It would be easier," she said casually, filing her nails. I quit my job that same week. I moved into my grandmother's small colonial house in Concord and spent the next 3 years by her side, measuring medication, sitting through long nights when the pain wouldn't let her sleep, reading to her when her voice grew too tired to finish a sentence. Avery visited twice. My parents came once a month, 30 minutes, maybe less. They always left with some excuse about traffic or a dinner reservation. But Grandma and we had something real. She told me stories about her youth, about the dreams she once had, about the grandfather I barely remembered. She taught me that strength wasn't about shouting louder than everyone else. It was about knowing your value, even when the world tries to forget it. 6 months ago, she passed away quietly in her sleep. My hand was in hers. At the funeral, my mother pulled me aside. "Don't act like you sacrificed so much," she said. "It's not like she left you anything." I didn't respond, because I didn't know yet how wrong she was. But Eleanor Sinclair had prepared something my family was already circling like vultures. The first warning sign came exactly 1 week before my birthday. I was finishing a double shift at Massachusetts General when my phone buzzed in the break room. I glanced down and froze. Avery. She never called me. Blair? Her voice was oddly sweet, too polished. Have you gotten any mail from a lawyer lately? Something about Grandma's estate? I frowned at the blank wall in front of me. No. Why? Oh, just curious. A small pause. Then quickly. Listen, Mom and Dad and I were thinking. We want to throw you a surprise birthday party. At the house. The whole family. I nearly dropped my coffee. In 32 years, my family had never thrown me a birthday party. Not once. A party? For me? We want to make things right, she said softly. After everything with Grandma, we've been distant. It's time to fix that. Something flickered in my chest. Hope. The reckless, foolish kind. 10 minutes later, Ethan Cole found me still staring at my phone. He's been my best friend since nursing school, the brother I never had. When I told him about the call, his expression darkened. Blair, he said quietly, setting down his clipboard, they've never celebrated you before. Why start now? Maybe they feel guilty about Grandma. People don't change overnight, he replied. They just get better at hiding what they want. I waved him off. You're being paranoid. But that night, lying awake in the dark, I couldn't shake his words. The way Avery emphasized lawyer, the way she asked about mail. Why would that matter? I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe, finally, my family wanted to act like one. I had no idea what was waiting for me. 3 days before the party, I ran into my aunt at a grocery store in Brookline. Lillian Sinclair, my mother's younger sister, the so-called black sheep. According to my parents, she talked too much and didn't know her place. In other words, she told the truth. Blair. She grabbed my arm in the produce aisle and glanced around as if someone might be listening. Do you know about Avery? My stomach tightened. Know what? She pulled me behind a display of watermelons, her voice dropping to a whisper. She's in trouble. Real trouble. She and Jordan poured everything into some cryptocurrency scheme, a so-called sure thing. My chest went cold. They lost almost $238,000. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright. They're drowning, Lillian continued. Debt to the bank, debt to friends. Your father's frantic. He's trying to pull money from anywhere he can to bail her out. Does he know how bad it is? I asked. He knows enough. Her grip tightened on my sleeve. I shouldn't be telling you this, but you deserve to know. That birthday party? It's not about celebrating you. My heart started pounding. Then what is it about? Her eyes met mine, pity and fear tangled together. I don't know exactly, but they've been meeting, the three of them, talking about your grandmother's estate, about a house. She let go of me. Be careful, Blair. And then she was gone. I stood alone in that aisle, surrounded by stacked fruit and cheerful background music, trying to breathe. What did Avery's debt have to do with me? That night, for the first time in weeks, I checked my mailbox. Working night shifts means you forget small things. Bills are automatic. Important updates come by email. The physical mailbox becomes an afterthought. But Lillian's words echoed in my head. A lawyer, an estate, a house. The envelope was buried beneath grocery flyers and credit card offers, heavy cream paper, formal, deliberate. In the corner, Callahan and Pierce, LLP, Boston, Massachusetts. My pulse spiked. I tore it open on the front steps, reading by the glow of my phone. Dear Ms. Kensington, we respectfully request your presence at our offices to discuss matters pertaining to the estate of Eleanor Sinclair, my grandmother's house. The small colonial in Concord where I had spent 3 years caring for her, I had assumed it would go to my mother, or be divided among the family. That's how these things usually worked. But the letter was addressed only to me. I dialed the number with unsteady fingers. A receptionist answered on the third ring. After a brief hold, she offered me an appointment, the day after my birthday. I hung up and sat there in the dark, turning the envelope over in my hands. Avery had asked about a lawyer's letter. Now I had one. And suddenly, my birthday party didn't feel like a celebration anymore. It felt like a setup. My parents had clearly been planning something involving Grandma's estate. And now this letter. The pieces were there, but I couldn't quite make them fit. Still, I decided to go to the party. Whatever they were orchestrating, I needed to see it with my own eyes. But I wouldn't walk in blind, not this time. That envelope from Callahan and Pierce sat unopened on my kitchen counter for just over a week. 2 weeks that could have changed everything if I had understood what it truly meant. The night before my birthday, I barely slept. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace. When I was 20, my father bought Avery a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday. I had spent 3 years saving for a used Honda. No one questioned the imbalance. When I turned 25, 26, 27, my mother forgot my birthday altogether. Avery received weekend spa getaways. I got a text message, if that. 2 years ago at Thanksgiving, Avery announced, loud enough for the entire table to hear, that I was just a nurse because I wasn't smart enough to become a doctor. Everyone laughed. I smiled. And I said nothing. Every time I stayed quiet, I told myself I was being mature, being the bigger person, protecting the family from unnecessary conflict. But lying there in the dark, I finally saw the truth. Every time I chose silence to keep the peace, I lost a piece of myself. If I kept going like that, I would disappear entirely. More holidays smiling through humiliation. More dinners watching my parents beam with pride at Avery while looking straight through me like I wasn't even in the room. I would fade into the background of my own life, and I refused to let that happen. Whatever was waiting for me at that house, whatever they had planned, I would not let them define me anymore. I would not shrink. I would not disappear. I reached into my nightstand and pulled out the last letter Eleanor Sinclair had ever written to me. Live like you deserve to, sweetheart. I pressed the paper against my chest and closed my eyes. I had no idea that promise would be tested in less than 24 hours. The next evening, I pulled into my parents' driveway wearing a navy blue dress, Grandma's favorite color. The driveway was packed. Cars lined both sides of the street. Some even spilled onto the neighbor's lawn. Far more than you'd expect for a simple birthday gathering. That was my first real warning. I texted Ethan before stepping out of the car. I'm here. Something feels off. Stay close to your phone. His reply came instantly. I'm parked 2 blocks away, just in case. Good old Ethan. Always prepared for the worst. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and froze. The living room had been rearranged entirely. Rows of folding chairs stretched wall to wall, easily 200 of them, all facing a long table at the front of the room. It looked like a trial. Every seat was filled. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. My father's business associates, old neighbors, even strangers I barely recognized. People clearly invited to fill seats. There were no balloons, no cake, no streamers, just 200 pairs of eyes turning toward me at once. Avery appeared at my side, her smile unnaturally bright. You made it. Everyone's waiting. Waiting for what? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. You'll see. She guided me forward, her manicured nails pressing into my sleeve. Just stand by the table. Where's the cake? Later. Avery, I whispered. What is this? She didn't answer. The crowd parted as we walked. No one said happy birthday. No one smiled. And then I was standing alone at the front of the room, facing 200 silent witnesses. My father slowly rose from his chair. He picked up a microphone, the kind used for wedding toasts. Thank you all for coming, he began. His voice echoed through the room. Tonight, our family needs to address an important matter. I scanned the crowd and found Lillian Sinclair near the back. Her face was pale. For 32 years, my father continued, turning toward me, your mother and I have raised you, fed you, clothed you, paid for your education, provided you with everything. Dad, my throat tightened. What's going on? Be quiet, I'm not finished. The room was utterly silent, 200 people holding their breath. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of papers, holding them up like evidence in court. This, he said, is a detailed accounting. Every dollar we spent on you from the day you were born until the day you moved out. Food, medical expenses, school supplies, birthday gifts, everything. He flipped to the final page and held it up for the crowd to see. The total, $412,750. And suddenly, I understood. This was never a party. It was a public execution. A murmur rippled through the room. Whispered shock. A chair creaked. Someone coughed. $412,750, my father repeated, his eyes locked on mine. Money we wasted on a daughter who turned her back on this family. I didn't turn my back on anyone, I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. You have two choices, Blair. He dropped the stack of papers onto the table with a heavy thud. Pay back every cent, or sign away your claim to your grandmother's house. My blood ran cold. My claim to what? Don't play dumb, he snapped. The lawyer sent you a letter. I haven't even read it yet. Doesn't matter. He slid another document across the table toward me. Sign this. Give up the house and we'll forget about the ledger. That's when my mother stood. Victoria Kensington walked to the wall of framed family photos, the wall I had grown up staring at, generations preserved in gold frames, my grandparents' wedding, my parents' honeymoon, Avery's ballet recital, my graduation. Holidays layered across decades. She reached up and pulled down the first frame, a picture of me at 5 years old, gap-toothed and smiling. 32 years, she said, her voice trembling with carefully staged heartbreak. 32 years of raising an ungrateful child. She tore the photo straight down the middle. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. I couldn't move. She grabbed another frame, my high school graduation. A daughter who only thinks of herself. RIP. My nursing school diploma photo. Who never appreciated anything we gave her. RIP. Then her hand moved to the one that made my heart stop. A picture of me and Eleanor Sinclair, taken a week before she died. Both of us smiling, her hand resting in mine. A daughter who manipulated a dying woman. RIP. The pieces floated to the floor like dead leaves. 200 people watched. Not one stood. Not one spoke. Then Avery stepped forward. She reached into my purse and pulled out my car keys with a triumphant little smile. Oh, and this? She said lightly, dangling them in front of my face. Dad already transferred the title. I need it more than you do. I looked at my mother, standing among shredded pieces of my childhood. At my father, gripping his stack of numbers like proof of my worth. At my sister, holding my keys like a trophy. At 200 relatives who had just watched my family try to erase me. I could have cried. I could have begged. I did neither. I took a slow breath. Then another. In my mind, I heard Eleanor's voice. You don't need their permission to matter. I looked at my father. Really looked at him. Past the anger. Past the performance. I saw something else there. Desperation. And the faint tremor in his hands. Dad? I said quietly. My voice surprised even me. Calm. Clinical. Have you actually read Grandma's will? He blinked. What? Her will. The legal document. Did you read it yourself? I don't need to read it, he snapped. The house was supposed to go to the family. Are you sure about that? Something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe fear. You're asking me to sign away rights you haven't even verified, I continued, my tone measured, like I was explaining a diagnosis to a patient who didn't want to hear it. That's not how legal documents work. From the back of the room, I saw Lillian Sinclair give me the smallest nod. I turned to Avery. How much do you owe? Her face went pale. What? The crypto investments, Jordan's sure thing. How deep are you? I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Whispers erupted across the room. People shifted in their seats. Confusion spread like a crack in glass. This isn't about Avery, my mother shouted. This is about you being selfish. No, I said firmly, lifting my hand. This is about you trying to take something that might not be yours, without even checking. Silence. I looked at the torn photos at my mother's feet, at the car keys still clutched in my sister's hand, at the ledger my father believed defined me. Then I looked toward the front door. I'm not signing anything tonight, I said clearly, and I'm certainly not signing under pressure in front of 200 people. My father slammed his palm on the table. Sign it, Blair, or you're no longer a Kensington. I stood there for a moment, facing the crowd. Some looked curious. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked entertained. This was their spectacle for the evening. My humiliation, served like dinner theater. Slowly, I reached up and touched the bracelet on my wrist, the one Eleanor had given me the day before she passed. Carefully, deliberately, I unclasped it and slipped it into my pocket close to my heart. They didn't deserve to see it anymore. I will not sign anything tonight, I said, my voice steady and clear as it carried across the silent room. I will not make legal decisions while being publicly ambushed, and I will not stand here and let you erase me. My mother's face twisted. How dare you? You tore my childhood off the wall, I replied evenly. Dad just demanded repayment for raising me. Avery took my car. I have nothing left to lose here. And with that, I turned toward the door. No one stopped me. No one reached out. No one said wait. No one said happy birthday. No one said I'm sorry. 200 people, and not a single voice. Ethan's car was waiting at the end of the block, just like he'd promised. I slid into the passenger seat without looking back. You okay? He asked gently. No, I said, staring straight ahead. But I will be. He pulled away from the curb, and my parents' house shrank in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. I didn't know it then, but walking out that door was the best decision I ever made. It only took 4 days for my family to realize what they'd done. Before I tell you what happened in those 4 days, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from something everyone expected you to endure? A moment when you finally said, enough? I'd love to hear your story. And let me tell you what happened next. Ethan stayed on my couch that night. Neither of us slept much. By morning, my phone had exploded. 47 missed calls from my father, 33 from my mother, 21 texts from Avery. Each message more frantic than the last. Call me back, it's urgent. We need to fix this. The extended family was worse. How could you treat your parents like that? Your grandmother would be ashamed. Selfish. We always knew you were selfish. I turned my phone off and set it face down on the kitchen counter. Ethan made coffee, strong and black, the way I drank it after long ICU shifts. He didn't interrogate me. He just sat there with me in the quiet. They only know one version of the story, he said eventually. They don't want to know the other, I replied. That afternoon, I opened Eleanor's memory box, the one she had given me in her final weeks. It was filled with small treasures from her life. Letters, old photographs, notes written in her careful handwriting. At the bottom, I found an envelope I had never opened. My name was written across it in her shaky script. Inside was a single page. My dearest Blair, it began. By now, you've probably discovered that things aren't unfolding the way your parents expected. Don't worry, sweetheart. I've taken care of everything. They will try to take what I've left you. Don't let them. Mr. Callahan knows the full truth. Trust him. I read those words 3 times. She had known. Even before she passed, she had known exactly what my family would attempt, and she had prepared for it. I looked at Ethan, the letter trembling in my hands. I need to see the lawyer. The next morning, I walked into the Boston offices of Callahan and Pierce LLP. Thomas Callahan was older than I expected, silver-haired, calm, with the quiet steadiness of a man who had seen every version of family conflict imaginable. His office smelled faintly of polished wood and old books. Ms. Kensington, he said, standing to shake my hand. I've been expecting you. You know what happened? He gave a small, knowing nod. Your grandmother predicted it almost word for word. He gestured for me to sit. Then he placed a thick document on the desk between us. Official seals, notarized signatures, heavy paper. Eleanor Sinclair's will. Your grandmother left her house to you, Blair, he said gently. Not to be divided, not to the family collectively, to you, solely. For a moment, the words didn't register. Just me? I whispered. Why? Because you were the only one who showed up, he replied softly. 3 years, Ms. Kensington. You gave up your career trajectory, your independence, your life to care for her. No one else even tried. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page, the familiar curve of Eleanor's handwriting. The property in Concord is valued at approximately $715,000, Mr. Callahan continued. It is yours, free and clear, no outstanding claims. But my father said, Your father assumed, he interrupted gently. He never actually read the will. He believed your grandmother would divide everything evenly. She chose not to. He paused. There's one more provision. My heart started pounding. What kind of provision? If any family member attempts to coerce, threaten, or pressure you into surrendering your inheritance, they forfeit any claim to her remaining assets. A faint smile touched his lips. Your grandmother was very deliberate. Before I could process that, the office door opened. I turned. Lillian Sinclair stood there. Her expression was soft, sad, relieved, almost protective. Hello, sweetheart. Aunt Lillian? I half rose from my chair. What are you doing here? She crossed the room and sat beside me. Your grandmother asked me to be here when the time came. Mr. Callahan nodded. Mrs. Sinclair served as a witness when Eleanor drafted this will. She was present for every decision. I looked between them, stunned. You knew? Lillian took my hand. I did. Eleanor called me 3 years ago, right after you moved in with her. She said, Victoria will never accept this. Blair will need someone in her corner. My eyes burned. Why didn't you tell me? She made me promise, Lillian said softly. She wanted you to know her love was unconditional, not something tied to money. She squeezed my fingers. She said you were the only one who loved her for herself, not for what she could give you. Mr. Callahan added quietly, The rest of your family was informed that a will existed. They were never told its contents. They assumed, and they were wrong. I replayed it all in my mind. My mother tearing down my childhood photos, my father announcing that $412,750 price tag like I was a failed investment, Avery smiling as she slipped my car keys from my hand. All of it built on an assumption, on a story they had convinced themselves was true. Lillian's voice trembled beside me. Your grandmother's last wish was for you to know that you are enough, Blair. You always were. You never needed anyone's permission to matter. That's when I finally cried. Not the night of the party, not when the photos were ripped, not when the ledger was read. I cried in a quiet Boston law office because for the first time in my life, I knew I hadn't imagined my worth. Those weren't tears of grief. They were tears of relief. By the second day after my birthday, the calls had turned frantic. I powered my phone on just long enough to count. 62 missed calls from my father, 48 from my mother, and one very long voicemail from Avery. Her voice wavered between panic and anger. Blair, the lawyer called us back. There's been some kind of mistake. You need to call me right now. I played it for Ethan while we sat in my kitchen, our coffee long gone cold. Mistake? He scoffed. That's what they're calling it now? The text messages were even more revealing. From my father, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. From my mother, Blair, please, this isn't what we intended. From Avery, the lawyer says you're the sole heir. That can't be right. Call me. I handed Ethan the phone. Funny how misunderstanding is their favorite word when things don't go their way. His jaw tightened. They were crystal clear 2 nights ago. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my father. We're family, Blair. Don't let some legal document come between us. I read it twice. Then I laughed, a hollow, exhausted sound. Legal documents didn't come between us, I said softly to the screen. You did. The moment you read that bill in front of 200 people. Ethan gently took the phone from my hands. You don't have to answer. I know, I said, but part of me wants to. Part of me wanted to unleash every truth I had swallowed for 32 years. Instead, I powered the phone off again. Some battles aren't won with arguments, they're won with silence. But silence wasn't enough for my family. On the third day, they came to my door. Ethan had gone back to his apartment upstairs. I was alone when I heard 3 sharp knocks. I checked the peephole. Charles Kensington, Victoria Kensington, Avery, standing in my hallway like a delegation. I opened the door, but I didn't step aside. Blair. My father's voice had changed, softer now, almost pleading. We need to talk. Then talk. My mother wrung her hands. Sweetheart, the other night, I was emotional. I got carried away. You tore my photos off the wall in front of 200 people, I said calmly. Was that an accident too? Silence. Avery stepped forward. Blair, listen, I'm in serious trouble. If I can't come up with the money... I know, I said. You and Jordan made bad investments. Her face hardened. You don't understand. I understand enough. I leaned against the doorframe. That's not my problem to solve. My father straightened, trying to reclaim authority. That house should belong to the whole family. Grandma wanted me to have it, I replied steadily. That's why my name is on the will. You're being selfish, my mother snapped, grief now curdled into anger. After everything we've done for you, you publicly humiliated us. I met her gaze. You demanded $412,750 for the crime of being born. You watched your other daughter steal my car. I let that sit in the air. And now you want me to pretend we're a loving family? We are family, my father insisted. That's not how family behaves. His phone rang. He glanced down, and something flickered across his face. Irritation or fear. I have to take this, he muttered, answering without stepping away. Yes, Barbara. Even from where I stood, I could hear the voice on speaker. Sharp, angry. Charles, I just got off the phone with Thomas Callahan. My father's jaw tightened. He says Blair is the sole beneficiary, that Eleanor left her everything. Is that true? It's complicated, my father replied stiffly. And he mentioned something about a coercion clause, the voice continued. If anyone tries to pressure her into giving up the house, they lose their own claim. My mother's face drained of color. Charles, the voice on speaker continued, sharp and unfiltered, tell me you didn't publicly disown your daughter over a house that was never yours to begin with. That's not what happened, my father muttered. I was there, Barbara shot back. I watched Victoria tear down those photos. I watched you read that absurd bill like she was an invoice. Her voice cracked, not with sympathy for him, but with disgust. 200 people saw what you did, Charles, and now everyone knows. Barbara, please. The whole family is talking. You tried to humiliate your own daughter into surrendering her legal inheritance, and you didn't even bother to verify whether you had a claim. My father's hand began to tremble. The phone shook against his ear. No one, Barbara said coldly, is on your side, not after this. And then the line went dead. The hallway fell into silence. My mother looked pale. Avery's eyes shimmered like she might cry. My father stared at his phone as if it had betrayed him. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. I think, I said quietly, you should leave now. Let me ask you something. If you had been standing where I was, watching your family realize the ground had just shifted beneath them, would you have forgiven them? Or would you have closed the door? If you want to see how this ends, stay with me. My father slipped the phone into his pocket. When he looked up, the rage was gone. In its place was something I had never seen before. Desperation. Blair, he said softly, smaller now. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Can we talk about this like adults? I studied his face. Are you sorry because you were wrong? I asked evenly. Or because everyone found out? He didn't answer. That was my answer. My mother pushed forward, tears streaking her makeup. Blair, please. Avery needs help. She's your sister. If she loses everything. She's a grown woman, Mom, I interrupted gently, the same tone I use when explaining medical reality to a patient who doesn't want to hear it. She made her own decisions. You're heartless, Avery snapped, fists clenched. You took my car keys out of my hand while Mom destroyed my childhood, I replied. You don't get to play the family card after that. My father tried again. That house belongs with the family. That's what your grandmother would have wanted. Grandma wanted me to have it, I said steadily. That's why she put it in writing. She hired Thomas Callahan. She had witnesses sign. I straightened my shoulders. That's not an opinion, Dad, it's a legal fact. So you're just going to keep it? He demanded. All of it? I'm going to honor her wishes exactly as she wrote them. He stared at me for a long moment. Then something in him seemed to collapse inward. Fine, he said, his voice flat, defeated. Don't come crying to us when you realize what you've thrown away. I won't. I stepped back and placed my hand on the door. I'm not abandoning family, Dad. I'm just done being treated like I don't exist. And then I closed the door. On the fourth day, I returned to the offices of Callahan and Pierce. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching dust in the air. Everything felt quieter now, clearer. I've made my decision, I told Thomas Callahan as I sat down. I want to keep the house. I don't want to sell it. He nodded, sliding a new stack of documents across the desk. What would you like to do with it? I thought of Eleanor sitting on her porch in Concord, watching birds at dusk. She always wanted it to be peaceful, I said softly. Somewhere safe. I paused. I'm going to live there, take care of it, just like she did. I signed the ownership transfer paperwork with a steady hand. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. There's one more matter, Mr. Callahan added, sliding another document toward me. The vehicle your sister took. I had almost forgotten about it. Your father had no legal authority to transfer that title, he explained. The Lexus is registered in your name, purchased with your funds. The transfer is invalid. He attempted an unauthorized transfer. Registry flagged the paperwork for irregular documentation. What does that mean? It means we file a complaint, correct the registration. He leaned back slightly. You get your car back. For the first time in days, I almost smiled. Let's do that. As I signed the final page, I hesitated. Mr. Callahan, did my grandmother ever say anything about my family before she passed? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, She told me, they won't understand, but Blair will, and that's enough. My throat tightened. She really knew them, didn't she? She knew all of you, he replied gently. That's why she made the choices she did. I left his office that afternoon holding the deed to the Concord house in my hands, and for the first time since my birthday, I felt peace. The worst part was over. The healing was just beginning. Within a week, the fallout spread far beyond my apartment door. 200 witnesses had seen everything, and families talk. They talk even more when there's scandal involved. I didn't have to say a word. The story traveled on its own. Your parents' friends are starting to distance themselves, Lillian called every few days with updates. The Hendersons canceled their standing dinner. The Watsons aren't returning calls. I didn't ask for that, I said quietly. You didn't have to, she replied. People saw what happened. They made their own judgments. It wasn't just social dinners. It was business. My father's company, Kensington Realty Group, ran on reputation, on trust, on the carefully curated image of a respectable family man closing respectable deals. That image cracked. One of his longest-standing clients, a developer named Martinez, who had worked with him for over a decade, pulled out of a $75,000 contract. I heard about your daughter's birthday, Martinez reportedly said. I don't partner with people who treat their own family like that. My mother's world unraveled just as quickly. She had served on the same charity board for nearly 20 years. They removed her quietly. We need members who reflect our values, the chairwoman told her. When Lillian shared all of this, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad. They did this to themselves, Ethan said when I told him. You didn't post anything online. You didn't tell anyone. They invited 200 witnesses. He was right. The truth has a way of speaking on its own. I didn't have to defend myself. My silence did it for me. But while my parents were dealing with reputational damage, Avery was facing something more immediate. A month later, Lillian came over with news. We were sitting on my apartment balcony, autumn sunlight warming the concrete between us. Tea steamed gently in our cups. Avery had to sell her house, Lillian said softly. I set my cup down. Sell it? She and Jordan couldn't keep up with the payments. The crypto debt caught up to them. She exhaled slowly. They've moved back in with your parents. I waited for satisfaction to rise in my chest. It didn't. I felt hollow. Your mother blames everyone but herself, Lillian added. The market, the economy, you. Of course. If only Blair had shared the inheritance, none of this would have happened, she mimicked with bitter accuracy. The inheritance wouldn't have covered the debt anyway, I said. I know that. You know that. Victoria won't admit it. A bird landed on the balcony railing. Grandma used to leave seeds out for birds every morning. Do you regret it? Lillian asked gently. Any of it? I thought carefully. I regret that they never really saw me, I said. That nothing I did was ever enough. I paused. But I don't regret standing up for myself. Not anymore. Lillian squeezed my hand. Eleanor would be proud. I hope so. We sat quietly, watching the sunlight fade. For 32 years, I had carried guilt that wasn't mine to carry. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, I got my car back. The process was straightforward. Thomas Callahan filed the appropriate documents. The Lexus had always been registered in my name. Purchased with my own earnings. My father had no authority to transfer it. A police officer accompanied me to retrieve it. I had dreaded that moment. Another confrontation, another performance. But when we pulled up to the house, it looked smaller, less imposing. Avery answered the door. Her face was drawn, tired. She looked older than I remembered. Without a word, she held out my keys. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Shame, maybe regret. Then it hardened. She turned and disappeared back inside. I didn't see my parents. I didn't look for them. As I walked toward my car, I heard a voice. Blair. I turned. Lillian stood on the front steps. She must have come through the side entrance. Are you okay? I looked at the house where I had grown up. The windows I once stared out of, dreaming of something bigger. The front yard where I had played alone while Avery entertained friends inside. I'm learning how to be, I said honestly. She smiled, her eyes shining. That's enough. I slid into the driver's seat. My car. The engine started with a familiar hum, and something inside me settled. Getting the car back wasn't about transportation. It was about reclaiming what was mine, including my dignity. I pulled out of the driveway, and this time, I didn't look back. 1 month later, I moved into Eleanor's house in Concord. The small colonial at the edge of town felt different now, quieter, safer, mine. I spent the first week cleaning, organizing, letting her presence settle around me like a warm, familiar blanket. Before I end this story, I want to leave you with something deeper than drama, deeper than inheritance, deeper than who won and who lost. This was never really about a house in Concord. It was about value. For most of my life, I thought love had to be earned. That if I worked harder, stayed quieter, achieved more, sacrificed enough, eventually my family would see me. Eventually I would become enough. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. You don't become worthy by shrinking yourself. You don't secure love by accepting disrespect. And you don't owe anyone repayment for simply existing. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the room where you are constantly being judged and choose a room where you can finally breathe. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. Silence is not weakness. Distance is not betrayal. It is self-respect. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden instead of a blessing, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not too much. You are not ungrateful. You are not wrong for wanting dignity. You are allowed to choose yourself. If this story spoke to you, take a moment to like this video and finding your voice. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace?